Welcome to the CondoVultures.com podcast with your host, Peter Zalewski, a Miami real estate broker, Wall Street consultant, and expert witness. This podcast is focused on identifying real estate buying opportunities in the South Florida condo market of Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. The CondoVultures.com podcast is not authorized by the South Florida real estate industry and will most likely annoy many of the region's talking heads. This podcast will feature straight talk and salty language that could be offensive to some. Please remember that past investment success does not determine future gains, especially in South Florida's volatile condo market. For more information, please visit CondoVultures.com.
Welcome to Miami Reporters Roundtable. I'm your host, Peter Zalewski from Condo Vultures. If you're tuning in this podcast, you're here for a conversation with my current and former journalists talking about some of the biggest stories that occurred within the last week that are impacting the local real estate market as well as the economy. I was a journalist for 13 years. I left. I went into real estate, and I've been fortunate enough to maintain and establish some relationships with a variety of journalists around the South Florida region. Some of them are national as well. But I never sort of lost that desire to try to bring the truth to a market. And the market of real estate tends to have a lot of fluff, a lot of embellishment, a lot of hyperbole in it. So what I want to do with this podcast is basically cut through some of the fluff and give you, the audience, an idea of what's really going on. So what we're going to do is we are going to discuss 6 stories that I handpicked. I sent them off to the journalists, asked them to give them a read, and then ultimately give some sort of review. So we'll go through those 6 stories. And then at the end, I'm going to ask each of the journalists to go ahead and provide us some words of wisdom. We have a lot of people who've recently moved to South Florida. We have others that they're always sort of looking for tips and suggestions. Given the fact that the economy is changing, I just sort of feel like it's a good way to sort of share wisdom for people who've been on the ground for quite some time. So what I'm going to do now is I will introduce each of the journalists, then we'll take a commercial break. And after that, we'll get into our first 3 stories. Let me start off the introductions. I'm going to introduce a gentleman who's a journalist for 25 years, 20 years of which were in the state of Florida. Where now he has a public relations and marketing company called Gruss Communications. That is John Gruss. If you want to reach him, go to his website. That's GrussPR.com, GRUSSPR.com. What's going on, John?
Hey, great to be back on the No Fluff podcast.
No fluff, and it's unauthorized, and salty language is permissible. So feel free to just express yourself, John.
I'm going to go crazy.
Nice. Who else do we have on the podcast? We have a gentleman who was a journalist for 20 years. He wrote about white-collar crime. He wrote about business. He wrote about restaurants. I say restaurant reviews. He pushes back. More importantly, he's known for making a call about the New York Jets making a trade to get a quarterback from the Green Bay Packers, a gentleman called Aaron Rodgers. He is in Miami Dolphin territory. So those are sort of fighting words. It's no one else but John Fakler. If you want to reach John Fakler, you can send him an email at fackler@consultant.com, FAKLER@consultant, singular.com. What's going on, Mr. Fakler, and how's Aaron Rodgers trade going for the Jets?
Another week without Aaron. Seems like you got some talking points every single week. That deal's not been done yet. And keep my fingers crossed, but glad to be back with the podcast.
It's great to have you back. And for anybody who did listen to some of our previous podcasts, the day that the Aaron Rodgers trade was announced, Mr. Feckler came out, proudly wore his New York Jets hat, was boasting, had a lot of machismo going. Now you sort of see the state of the news coming out of the New York Jets organization. So, and then our rotating journalist this week is a gentleman who has been a journalist for 20 plus years. He does investigative type of work. He likes to get in there and sort of dig into things. I like to say he likes to crack skulls. It's no one else but Francisco Alvarado. Francisco is a South Florida reporter for The Real Deal. What's going on, Francisco?
I'm doing great, Peter. I'm happy to be back and to fill in the audience with what I've been working on and what's going on in The Real Deal.
Always love having your perspective. You're always out there cracking skulls, like I like to say. If anybody wants to reach Francisco, you can get him at Francisco Alvarado at therealdeal.com, FRANCISCO.ALVARADO at therealdeal.com. So that being said, why don't I get into some of the rules of engagement? Point number 1, if you're listening to this podcast on a traditional platform such as Apple, such as Google, such as Anchor, we now offer the capability to have video. Go to any kind of platform that permits for video, such as Spotify, or if you want to check us out on YouTube, our handle is CondoVulturesTV. That's CondoVulturesTV. And also, too, if you have any questions for us or comments, please feel free to send an email to inquiry@CondoVultures.com, INQUIRY @CondoVultures.com. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and we'll take our first commercial break. The other side of the break, we're going to get into our first three stories.
It's a simple formula, and it works. Buy low, sell high. We're Condo Vultures, and when it comes to your real estate, we help you buy low. At Condo Vultures, we represent the buyer, and now's the time to buy. Log on to CondoVultures.com for more information. CondoVultures.com. And remember, before you sell high, you have to buy low. Featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, 60 Minutes, and Time Magazine. Condo Vultures Realty, a licensed Florida real estate brokerage capitalizing on the condo correction since 2006.
Welcome back to the Miami Reporters Roundtable. I'm your host, Peter Zalewski from Condo Vultures. For our first story, we're going to go to John Gruss. John, this is a piece that comes out of the Insider. I'm going to read you the headline. I'll read you the first couple graphs, then I'll ask you to sort of opine on it. Here's the headline. Inflation is about to drop hard as rents and housing prices tank. Billionaire investor Barry Sternlicht says. Three key points for the article. Point number one, inflation will drop off thanks to falling rents and housing prices. Barry Sternlicht said. Point number two, the billionaire investor pointed to falling rents, which will show up in inflation data later this year. Point number three, he warned high interest rates could over-tighten the economy into a severe recession. Now, John, before I ask you to comment on it, let me lay out some details about Barry Sternlicht. Barry Sternlicht made a name in South Florida. He's a gentleman who made his name up in New York with Starwood, the hotelier. They own real estate, did a variety of different things. Back during the Great Recession, there was a bank that did a lot of condo construction financing. It was a bank out of Chicago. They went nationwide. They went into volatile markets like South Florida. And ultimately, the Fed shut them down. And Barry and his group, ST Residential, was successful in competing with a number of big funds around the country, including the related group down here in South Florida. Barry bought a $4.5 billion loan portfolio, more than 100 condo towers scattered around the country, but primarily South Florida. He was able to successfully take over these loans, in some cases take over the property, sell off the units and make a bundle. Barry has now decided to go into condo development. He announced last year he's putting up a tower in Miami Beach. And lo and behold, now he's coming out and saying we're going to have a hard landing and housing prices are coming down. So Mr. Gruss, why don't you give us some perspective about the significance, A, of what Barry's saying, and B, whether or not it might bite him in the ass when he goes from distress and he starts to move into, the rah-rah venture days of building condo towers.
Well, first of all, a lot of very smart people have been wrong on inflation, including the Federal Reserve, which has a huge staff of economists on its payroll. So, anyone who says that inflation is going up or down, I think, you have to sort of take that with a grain of salt because no one really knows. Look at what just happened with OPEC. They cut oil production and oil prices surged like 10% in a matter of days just over the weekend. Stuff like that, you can't predict and you don't know where inflation is going to go. So I do take that with a grain of salt. The other thing too is, I don't know about you, but I'm not paying anything. I'm not paying lower prices for anything these days. In fact, I was just looking at the data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the inflation rate for Miami, the latest number was 9.9%. It was actually the highest in the nation over a 12-month period.
Whoa.
So, so we're definitely in the hot inflation zone here. And then the third thing is, whenever anyone talks about inflation or makes economic forecasts, or you really have to consider the source. So Barry Sternlicht, obviously, real estate, heavily involved in real estate. It's to his advantage that that interest rates fall. This is the lifeblood of real estate, and financing is the key to successful real estate deals. And it's in his interest that interest rates fall, so he can do more deals in Miami. So I really would take it with a grain of salt. I think inflation's seriously embedded in the economy, in wages now, in services, in food and cars, used cars. It's everywhere. So really, it's going to take some serious tightening by the Fed to get inflation under control. And I don't know whether Barry Sternlicht is right or not, but so far we haven't seen a very a big move towards deflation. So I think people need to take those things into account.
Interesting. I would say it would be very interesting though if the market were to do like Barry's predicting, and lo and behold, he gets out of his lane, which is distress, he gets into building new construction and all of a sudden it goes sideways on him and somebody circles back around and takes his property. That would be fun to watch. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, John.
Well, it's curious to me why he got into development at the peak of the market. I believe, or a lot of people believe, that we're closer to the end of the cycle than we are at the beginning of a cycle. And it seems to me that anyone who begins a project now or in the last 12 months is really taking a big gamble because the cycle is really coming. I think we're coming to the end of a cycle. So, who knows?
John, it might be some of that New York bravado, kind of like coming out and saying Aaron Rodgers and getting traded from the Packers to the Jets, and then lo and behold, it doesn't go down. So just something to think about. So story number 2, we're going to move on to Francisco Alvarado. It's coming out of the Miami Herald. I'm going to read you the headline. I'm going to read you the first couple graphs. I wonder if you could just sort of comment on it. Now, anybody who doesn't know how a condo association works and an umbrella association works, let me just sort of put out the big picture. Just so as I read the story, if some of you out there who are listening or watching, you're not really aware of it, it'll give you some context. Generally speaking, when you get into some of these subdivisions, whether it's townhouses, it's condos, it's single-family houses, what will happen is small portions of a large community might be broken up into individual or specific associations. So let's say there's 12 buildings or so. So they might break it out where each or every set of 4 buildings is its own condo association, where that means they get to govern it. And then typically they will put an umbrella association on top of that, where the smaller ones are kind of answer to the bigger ones. So that's the big picture concept. So Francisco, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to read you the headline. Then I'm going to read you the first couple graphs, and I would love you to give some context. So again, Miami Herald headline: after arrest and 300% fee hike, Florida's largest homeowner association gets a new board. And here we go. First couple graphs. The last time the Hammocks, which is the name of the association, held an election for board members, it was a debacle that further alienated homeowners from a tyrannical board of directors that had seized control of the West Kendall subdivision. West Kendall is a suburb of Miami, by the way. Hundreds of residents waiting in line were not allowed to vote because of a bomb threat, which police later said was fake. A protest erupted outside the clubhouse. There were accusations of ballot tampering and bribery. Despite the outrage, the board running the largest homeowner association in Florida was reelected after certifying its own results. The new board then held a secret budget meeting and promptly ordered a 300 to 400% increase in monthly maintenance fees. 10 months later, 2 board members and 2 former board members were charged with stealing $2 million from the homeowners association. On Thursday, a sense of serenity returned to the Hammocks Association and a sense of trust. A clean election was held and 7 new board members took office. First order of business discussed at their first meeting, Tuesday, April the 4th, how to get the fiscal books in order and replenish the reserve fund that was plundered. Francisco, is this an anomaly or is this pretty typical? And the fact that this is one of the largest homeowners associations, if not the largest in Florida, that's why it's getting headlines. What can you sort of tell us based on the reporting you've done and just what you've seen living here as well as being an investigative journalist?
Okay, so it's not an anomaly by any stretch of the imagination. But I wouldn't say it's typical either. I think it's a situation, obviously, because, we have so many condo associations, we have so many homeowners associations, that you are going to have these little fiefdoms where little cliques form and they take over the boards and they see they get a hold of these budgets. We're talking, millions of dollars in some cases. And it just becomes a free for all. This is the Hammocks, and it's a big, obviously it is the largest, subdivision, but, there's all these condo buildings, downtown Miami, Miami Beach, all the coastal cities where you have boards that are dealing with, multi-million-dollar assessments. There's a association, here in the Upper East Side, Miami's Upper East Side. I forget the name right now at the top of my head, but they're looking at, where the homeowners, the condo owners are looking at anywhere from, 5 figures to 6 figures in assessment to, so they can be certified, get the 40-year certification. And a lot of it, is, this is a association that is tied up in litigation with home, property owners and the condo board. So I think that, what you're seeing with the hammocks, though, is definitely because, the size of it, the amount of money involved. It definitely makes for a splashy headline, and a great press conference for the state attorney. I think that, this is not the first one that we're going to see. I think there's more coming down the pike for sure.
And Francisco, if I could just follow up, there was a tower that collapsed that made international headlines because close to 100 people were killed. Ultimately, there was a $1 billion settlement that was paid out. This is a tower called the Champagne Tower South. It's located in Surfside, just north of Miami Beach boundary, if you will. And as a result, legislation has changed in the state of Florida. A lot of condo associations are no longer able to kick the can and not do the necessary work that they used to do previously because they don't want to hit their residents with special assessments. I just wonder, now that the light has been turned on in terms of the legislation requiring work to be done, do you think the roaches are going to be scurrying in and around the kitchen? Or do you think that we're going to ultimately figure out that we got a clean cupboard and a clean kitchen and there's really nothing to worry about as it pertains to these associations and some of the assessments and what they have been and have not been doing?
Oh no, you're definitely going to see a lot, like a lot of cockroaches scurrying in the kitchen. The kitchen, the living room, the bathrooms, the bedrooms. They're going to be crawling all over the walls. Again, I mean, it's not it's not something I would say like, it's typical, but it's definitely, there's again, because, I mean, there hasn't really been any real oversight of these condo associations for decades. And it's only been in recent years that, there's attention that's being drawn to it. And even so, I mean, like, even when, home, property owners, condo owners, make complaints to the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, a lot of times these investigations, don't really, result in anything other than, a letter from the Department of, Professional Regulation saying, hey, you're doing things wrong. You need to, clean up your act. But I mean, unfortunately, it's, you can't legislate ethics. So if you don't have people, if you don't have people that have good ethics, they're just going to they're going to treat it like their own piggy bank. I mean, I think that goes for, obviously, I mean, like, it goes for like, whether you live in a, luxury high rise in downtown Miami, or if you live in a subdivision out in Kendall.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny. And John, we're going to go to you with the next story, but during our last, one of our previous podcasts, one of the reporters called us a godless place. So I think that sort of fits into some references Francisco was saying. Mr. Fakler, John Fakler, we're going to go to you with this story. This story will also come out of the Miami Herald, and it's actually just occurred. So anybody who doesn't know Miami, basically you have a river right at the heart of downtown, the mouth of the river. The river is called Miami River. And the original inhabitants here were called the Tequestas. So they had a community in and around Miami well before any of the explorers came, well before the city was established. So that's the background. Let me get into the first couple graphs in the headline, Mr. Fakler, then I'll ask you to comment. Here we go for the headline. Miami officials and a developer reach a compromise to save part of a key prehistoric Brickell site. And again, Brickell Avenue is the road where the financial district is, primarily in South Florida, or definitely in Miami. And many people in Latin America will call it the financial district of Latin America because so many foreign nationals are based here. So again, headline, Miami officials and a developer reach compromise to save part of key prehistoric Brickell site. And first couple graphs from Mr. Feckler. Miami's Historic Preservation Board late Tuesday set the wheels in motion towards designation of a big piece of a major prehistoric archaeological site in Brickell as a protected landmark. But in a compromise with the property owners, the Related Group, who's the largest condo developer in terms of vertical in the state of Florida, held back on action on a portion where the prominent developer plans to build a pair of skyscrapers. The 2-8-0 votes by the Preservation Board came after a confusing and sometimes heated 5-hour hearing that one archaeologist who helped the city staff draw up a proposal for historic designation of the related property, University of Miami professor William Pestle, described as chaos. Last graph, Mr. Fakler. The votes appear to provide the City Preservation Board something that residents and activists and independent experts had been clamoring for: greater and more direct authority over what Related does at the site of what's quickly come to be considered the most significant local archaeological discovery since the Miami Circle in 1998. Mr. Feckler, what do you make of the fact that a condo developer wants to put up 2 high rises, which ultimately is going to drive property taxes, which ultimately is going to fill the coffers of city officials and give them ability to do something. And this development is going to be levered against the history of this area. In the article, it says that the site might go back as far as 7,000
Exactly.
years. So what do you make of that, and how do you think it's ultimately going to play out?
Well, this story has now become a national story. What began as a small archaeological plot, a meeting place of the Tequestas, going back a couple of thousand years, exhibit space was set up. Now, once the digging began again, it became a huge site. It's on both sides of the river. It goes back now, they're saying 7,000 years, which has attracted the National Registry of Registry of Landmark, forgot the
Designation or consideration?
Yeah, and it's which is a national thing. And so apparently at this board meeting Tuesday, it was an overflow crowd. You mentioned chaos, which is the way it was described. So you had all these developers showing up. You had all these archaeological, national and international people showing up because of the significance of this new dig. But you also had several Florida Indian tribes showing up. And just to work backwards, just to make this even more of a clusterfuck, if I could use the expression, the Indians, because they found human remains on this latest dig, they want the work to stop completely. They want, possession of the remains, because they're human remains. They're not just pottery and trinkets. They use the word desecration. They feel that not just the developers, but the archaeologists are desecrating the site by continuing to do any work. So that's a third factor, which wasn't really there before, and it's adding to this complete, maelstrom of confusion, essentially. And there won't be any more movement, I think, for another couple of months. I think the next board meeting's in June. But, there's been a lot of pushback up.
John, back in the 1990s, a condo developer was going to put up a high rise. There were 2-story rentals right located at the
Miami Circle.
at the south bank of the river. Lo and behold, during the excavation, they discovered what would ultimately become this Miami Circle, something dating back 2,000 years ago. So the state of Florida stepped up. They bought the dirt. They were going to turn it into some sort of historical landmark. Ultimately, 20 years later, what we have is the circle is actually covered in sod, and it's become one of the largest, most expensive dog parks in the city of Miami. John, what do you think the potential is that if the city and the state step up and preserve this area, that it actually is, if there's some sort of use that the residents can have and not just for dogs?
Well, that's partly what is being discussed. It's actually a huge part of it, and that is to have these sites, Related is going to have to agree to have sort of an exhibit space, walkways, greenway, museum type space devoted to the Tequestas. So this will be sort of a draw for them, but also so residents can come and learn about the tribe, and actually Related has been agreeing to all of this, down the road for the last couple of years, actually, and has been preparing for this. But it's going to be good for both. I mean, I think Related is going to get part of the parcel, and the rest of it is going to be devoted to the archaeological digs. So it'll be a win-win for everybody. And right now, but I mean, ultimately Related must be, just shaking their head like they can't seem to win. They already lost, I believe they've invested $20 million, because they've got to take care of they've got to do these archaeological planning before they do any construction. They've already spent $20 million. I think there's another over $100 million in dirt that they bought, another $150 million in a construction loan. So they got a lot invested this financially, and the city's not going to turn their back on them, of course. So they're going to come to a compromise.
Yeah. Francisco or Jean, either of you would like to offer any comments or insight into this? And will it be another dog park? Okay, hearing nothing, let's go ahead. We'll take a commercial break. Other side of the break, we're going to get our next 3 stories. This is Peter Zalewski of the Condo Vultures podcast. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. And I wanted to alert you that if you have a property that you're looking to sell in the Tri-County, South Florida area, I would encourage you to reach out to Jenny Cortez, a licensed real estate broker with CVRRealty.com. She's my partner. She's been in the business for north of 15 years. More importantly, she knows the market. She knows how to get a deal done. And she also realizes that it's more important to get a price that you can accept and sell the property rather than to hold firm on some price that's never going to be achieved and ultimately languish on the market. So if you're looking to do a deal that you want a skilled expert who can help you sell a property, reach out to Jenny Cortez at 305-865-5859, 305-865-5859, or visit her website, cvrrealty.com. Welcome back to the Miami Reporters Roundtable. I'm your host, Peter Zalewski from Condo Vultures. We're going to talk about the next 3 stories that I handpicked. I asked the journalists to go ahead and review them and then provide some feedback. We're fortunate enough that story number 4 is actually written by Francisco Alvarado. So, Francisco, let me read the headline, and then I'll also read the first couple graphs, and then maybe you can provide some insight for us. You wrote the story. You might not be able to provide comments. Maybe you can just provide facts, and we'll sort of play it by ear. So here we go. The piece ran in The Real Deal. Headline: Banyan K Resort files for second bankruptcy, could head to auction. Subhead: Court motion seeks to hire Keene Summit Capital Partners to market the still under construction golf resort and adjacent development sites. First couple graphs: Dominic Gatto Jr., the embattled developer of the Banyan K Resort in West Palm Beach, is waving the white flag. On Wednesday, Gatto's development entity for the hotel-anchored mixed-use project filed for Chapter 11 reorganization with a plan to sell a 200-acre property to pay off debtors. Fort Myers-based forensic accountant Gerald A. McHale is a proposed chief restructuring officer, according to the development entity's petition of the West Palm Beach U.S. bankruptcy courts. Next graph: McHale is seeking the bankruptcy court's permission to hire Keene Summit Capital Partners to market the property. Miami-based attorney Joseph A. Pack, who represents the development entity Banyan K Resort and Golf LLC, not immediately respond to the email request for comment. Francisco, why don't you give us an idea of what's exactly going on here? Obviously, some developers trying to build a mixed-use development. It's all gone sideways, and now he's basically looking to auction it off. But what are some of the particulars related to this?
Well, the backstory is that this project's been going on for several years now, and it's a luxury hotel resort, and it has a golf course designed by Jack Nicholas that already has members. And then there's 2 adjacent sites where a condominium, villas, and some single family homes are going to be developed. But it all went south quickly, at the onset of COVID. A lot of delays, a lot of subcontractors not getting paid, a lot of liens getting issued, and it got to the point where the construction lender that provided about a little over $60 million construction loan filed a foreclosure lawsuit last year against the development entity because they missed several deadlines, and also had they also had fallen behind on some of the payments. And then complicating matters is that Dominic Gatto Jr. ends up getting indicted by the feds on an unrelated probe into healthcare fraud involving about $60 million. And his co-defendant is Thomas Faris, who's a 78-year-old former capo regime of the Colombo crime family. So let's just say that, that was a little hiccup that kind of just further put this, development in the hole. And we got to the point where the lender was going to, won a foreclosure judgment against the development entity. And it was about to go to, auction, I believe last month. No, actually, no, this month. It was going to go to auction this month. And then, then he had to file for bankruptcy protection to kind of prevent that from happening. And then, obviously, come up with a plan to, pay off the debtors and, cut his losses. He's also, when I say second bankruptcy, because there's another related entity that's the parent company of the development entity that also had to file for bankruptcy because they were facing a foreclosure action from a mezzanine lender. That was a consortium of EB5 Visa investors. So it was a really a complicated kerfuffle, and now Dominic Gatto is, I guess, I mean, he really has no other option but to kind of like get the construction back on track, get that resort finished, and and find a buyer.
So Francisco, we just went through a time when people were coming from New York. They were coming from California to Florida. They were looking to buy. Many people were going to Palm Beach County, especially a lot of hedge fund types. Any kind of property you put on the market, open houses would get overwhelmed. I'm just wondering, do you have any insight how somebody can launch a brand new pre-construction development project during all of this time and A, not be successful, and B, not be able to sell it to some other developer who maybe has more experience or more of a track record and be successful? So some part doesn't make sense to me how you just went through this, the go-go days of what should have been selling real estate, especially luxury real estate in South Florida because of the pandemic. And yet somehow this project, it totally missed the mark.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's obvious. I mean, it's, you got indicted in the, in the middle of COVID. And, like kind of like, I guess, your priorities change when you're facing, a lot of years in the federal pen. And also, also had a hardball lender, after him. And that complicated things. I mean, I do know that, there was a deal in the works to sell it to a major developer, within this time frame that we're talking about. But, the lender's lawsuit and that foreclosure judgment, just kind of like, delayed that. And then, the market changed, interest rates went up and the buyer said, "Nah, sorry, we can't do the deal." So that's where he's at now. He's got to go to bankruptcy court.
Great story. I can't wait to hear more about what's going to ultimately transpire there. So for our next story, John, we're going to go to you for story number 5. This is coming out of the Commercial Observer. And let me read you the headline and the first couple graphs, and then I'll ask you to comment. Line: Terra offers $500 million for oceanfront Miami Beach condo building. And first couple graphs, take 2. Terra has offered $500 million to buy out an oceanfront condo building in Miami Beach 6 months after a related group-led venture backed out. According to a letter obtained by the Commercial Observer, located at 5445 Collins Avenue, the property, known as the Castle Beach Club, sits on 4 acres along the famed Miami Beach Strip, offering 576 linear feet along the ocean. The deal, if finalized, would effectively become the most expensive land purchase in the Miami area. Terra, led by David Martin, who will most likely tear down the 18-story building and construct an ultra-luxury condo complex. The site can accommodate a structure up to 200 feet tall. Now, John, before I ask you to comment, let me take people back in time. Let's get in a time machine. Let's go back to the Great Recession. Back then, the city of Miami Beach actually closed down this building because it wasn't maintaining the safety and the structural integrity of the particular building. Everybody was told to pack their shit and get out. They had 24 hours basically to grab everything. They moved somewhere else. Lo and behold, a special trustee was put in place. Trustee might not be the proper term, but some sort of monitor was put in place. It took care of trying to make the building safe. So anybody who was living in the building at the time, they had to continue to pay their mortgage if they had one. They had to continue to pay their maintenance fees. They had to continue to pay their property taxes. They also had to pay a special assessment. In addition to that, they had to pay to live elsewhere. It took a number of years to ultimately bring this building back online. And once it did, people were able to move back in and enjoy their lifestyle. And here we are now, 10 years later, and lo and behold, they're looking at possibly selling off the entire building. What do you sort of make of all that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many angles to this story. But really sort of what I was particularly interested in was the fact that Related had pulled out because they couldn't get the financing for a deal of that size. And I mean, that if Related can't get the financing, then I'm not sure how Terra can get the financing. I mean, it's the same, basically the same deal. And I'm not exactly sure. And the story says that, the financing details are not disclosed. I mean, that's kind of the key to the whole, deal. But it also surprises me a little bit because, obviously, lenders are getting a little skittish now because, the economy, the forecasts of a recession and rising interest rates. It seems to me that we're closer to the end of the cycle than we are at the beginning. And so perhaps Related and its financial backers decided, you know what, this is too rich a deal at this stage in the cycle. And we might be in a recession by the time we've torn this thing down and put up some luxury product, and we may not be able to sell it. I mean, and Terra obviously has a different idea, and perhaps they have stronger financial partners. Who knows? There's a lot of unanswered questions there, but it seems to me that it's taking a big gamble on a piece of property that perhaps might take several years to tear down and put up a new structure, and by then we might be in a full-blown recession. So there's a lot of unanswered questions there, and I'd be interested to know, particularly the financing situation for this project.
Now, for what it's worth, part of the story says of the 570 units or so that's in the Castle Beach, each of the owners would basically get an average of $877,200 a door. If anybody's ever been in the Castle Beach, it's a shithole. All due respect.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it's the old school place. If you're going to make $900,000 off of one of these units, that's a nice payout. I don't know who would vote no against it.
But it's it's 4 acres of beachfront, prime beachfront property. But still, I mean, those kinds of prices are peak level prices. And, I don't know how it pencils out from a financing standpoint. And I'm not sure how deep the market is for, multi-million dollar condos. I mean, there's a tsunami of luxury condos that's coming onto the market. And how deep is that customer base? I don't know the answers to that question, but it seems to me that at this point in the cycle, that's quite risky.
Interesting. Okay. Story number 6. Mr. Fakler, we're going to go to you with this one. We didn't have any spring break stories this week. It's still, spring break is still going on. You've been complaining about the spring break situation. You've also offered some suggestions to City of Miami Beach officials on how to deal with the situation. So this is the closest I could get to a spring break type of story. It's coming out of the Real Deal. Let me read the headline, first couple graphs. Headline: Miami real estate agent ruined by Instagram scam. Some mysterious hacker has cost her tens of thousands in business. And here's first couple graphs from Mr. Feckler. A Miami real estate agent has come forward as one of the victims of a prolific social media scammer. Kay Jenkins told ProPublica her 100,000 follower Instagram account has been repeatedly deactivated by scammer called OBN since 2021, telling the publication he makes sure that your life is miserable and that he'll try to get as much money out of you as he possibly can. In addition to being a real estate agent, Jenkins is also a model with an OnlyFans account. She earned $15,000 to $20,000 a month in subscriptions and sponsorship, but started to see her Instagram account suspended repeatedly after moving from Utah to Miami in March of 2021 during the pandemic. The scheme involves a hacker shutting down social media profiles on Instagram and Meta before demanding a ransom to get them back in line. The hacker also charges people who request OBN to take down an account. Mr. Fakler, real estate has sort of really embraced social media. Social media is the way you kind of get your message out. Back in the day, it used to be by putting out reports. The media would write about it. You'd be on TV. Now you don't need any of that. You can bypass everything. You can go on social media. It can be Instagram. It can be, I never really heard of realtors going on OnlyFans, but who knows? Maybe. You go on Facebook, you go on TikTok, you're able to do that. So really the lifeblood of somebody in the real estate world who is an independent contractor, they have to market themselves, is social media. And if there is a hacker who's focusing on these types of individuals to basically shake them down and block them out of their account, so they basically can't market themselves and they have to start from scratch. What do you make of that? And how creative are these hackers where they've now moved on to little individual realtors who have one-person businesses?
Well, it's really brilliant. This techno bro is 20 years old, holed up at his mother's house in Vegas somewhere. And that's what the story says. I mean, it's interesting because I think you should not only beware of social media, but beware of podcasts. I say this because apparently this woman, this realtor, was on a podcast with another woman. So the podcast host was jealous for whatever reason, we don't know. But it turned into a situation where she actually contacted this techno bro scammer and paid to have this woman have her sites pulled. Like you said earlier, the guy's working both sides of the fence here. He's, you can pay him to pull down people's, site, or he can do it himself. So, she was very upset about this, lost tens of thousands of dollars, was suicidal. And essentially, she got a lawyer. She went after the guy. Actually, she went after Meta and Instagram to have him pull the site because this guy was a scammer. They wouldn't either call him back or they wouldn't talk to them. And it wasn't until ProPublica called to get comments that Meta and Instagram suddenly pulled the guy's site, 20 related sites. So it was once I saw there was an investigative story going on, they suddenly, pulled all the sites, and I think they banned the guy for life. So, it just goes to show you got to be real careful, with these scammers, with the social media. But in a situation like that, how did this woman? She had no idea. I mean, this was somebody who she trusted that turned out to be jealous of her for whatever reason, and had her sites, ruined. Basically, had her almost a career ruined. So, got to be careful going forward with these scammers, because I think there's going to be a proliferation of them going forward.
Now, Mr. Feckler, quick question. You're not necessarily in that demographic of millennials who might be relying on social media to find a real estate agent.
Right.
If you were going out looking for a real estate agent, how would you approach it in this new world where basically print publications, newspapers that you actually hold your hand, hard copies, it exists, but nobody really looks at it. So, Mr. Feckler, how would somebody in your demographic go about finding a realtor in this day and age if social media, or is social media the way you would do it?
Yeah, social media is definitely the way I would do it. I mean, it's just, part of what you have to worry about, it's the risky, it's the cost of doing business, is somehow stumbling on a scandal like this. And ultimately online is the only way to go anyway. So you really can't avoid it. And I'm not really sure what they're going to do about these scammers, because there's really not much to do about them. If they're one-offs, what can you do? How do you regulate them? Unless Meta takes a step forward and says, okay, we're going to do this and do their own research. But we all know that they're not going to do anything. So
interesting. I would be interested if The Real Deal, who published this article, if they were to do a follow-up based on the OnlyFans account, but that's a story for a different day. We're going to go ahead. We'll take a commercial break. The other side of the break, we'll come back, and I'm going to ask the journalist for words of advice. This is Peter Zalewski of the Condo Vultures podcast. Before I started doing these podcasts, I've been in the business of being a licensed real estate broker, a contributing columnist for the Miami Herald, as well as the Miami Real Deal, but also extra witness work in consulting. So if you are looking for an expert witness, or if you're looking for consulting services, a straight talk perspective as to what's going on in a particular marketplace, a building, or what happened previously, for whatever your situation is, whether you are an attorney, whether you are a institutional fund looking to invest, or whether you're a lender who's trying to come up with some sort of strategy and approach for your lending committee going forward, I just might be able to help you. To get a hold of me, please reach out to Peter@CondoVultures.com. That's Peter@CondoVultures.com, or give me a call to the office at 305-865-5859, 305-865-5859. Welcome back to Reporters Roundtable. I'm your host, Peter Zalewski of Condo Vultures. Let me remind you, if you are listening to this podcast on the traditional format, such as Apple, Google, or Anchor, you can actually watch this podcast go to a platform that provides for video such as Spotify, or you can look us up on YouTube where our handle is CondoVulturesTV. Now, what I want to do for this segment is I want to ask our journalists to go ahead and offer some words of wisdom. We're now in the second quarter of 2023. We are in the midst of a banking crisis. We have the stock market that is very volatile. We have crypto, which has basically been devastated. Nobody's really sure what's going to go on as we go forward in terms of the economy. Some people are saying, including in this podcast this week, that we're looking at a serious recession. Others are saying we're going to have a soft landing as the Fed tries to deal with inflation and they raise interest rates. So what I want to do is I want to tap into some of our journalists, ask them for words of advice, especially for members of our audience who maybe are newly arrived to South Florida. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start with John. John, could you offer some words of advice about the economy or enduring a changing economic situation in South Florida for maybe somebody who's either just gotten here or maybe somebody who's just looking for tips as to how to batten down the hatches and prepare for the unknown?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting on that very Stern-like story that you asked me to comment on. I did a quick check of the inflation numbers, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics actually tracks big metro areas like Miami and Tampa and in Florida. And they publish that every 6 months. They publish the numbers for Miami. It was very interesting to see that the latest number, which was for December over December, was 9.9% inflation, basically 10% inflation in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm area. I mean, that is really quite significant, and it's much higher than a national average. And so, it's just what, obviously we all know the factors that are driving it. Obviously, housing and rent is a big component of that. And I think that it's going to take a while for that to slow down. I think we're not going to see it slow down significantly. And certainly, if you own a business in Miami, you're going to see continued pressure on wages, and you're going to see continued upward pressure on rents for your, retail space or office space or warehouse space. I don't think there's going to be a let up this year, personally. And you just got to keep track of those numbers, because you should be able to make your adjustments to your business and how you charge customers based on, just keeping up with inflation. And right now it's super high.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Francisco, what about you? Do you have any words of advice for South Floridians as we sort of deal with, this time of uncertainty economically after the go-go days, which followed the pandemic, with the state of Florida being open and everybody descending on this town, and nightclubs being able to charge huge bar tabs to a lot of these crypto bros when Bitcoin was getting at 68,000. Now it's down under 30. So what would be your words of advice, Francisco?
Avoid those guys that tell you to buy the dip in the crypto markets. It's still dipping. And definitely, and if you're a landlord, definitely avoid signing any crypto or tech firms at this moment, because with everything that's happening in the banking crisis, especially with Silicon Valley Bank, right now, that's probably, those are probably the kind of tenants you don't want in your building.
Great point. And I'm assuming you could probably parlay that. And if somebody looking for a job, probably don't send a resume to these types of firms if you're looking for long-term stability.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. Mr. Feckler, what about your words of advice?
Well, I'm not a real estate reporter, but I've got a vested interest in this, in that anyone who's looking for a condo, coming to the region for the first time, is not familiar with the landscape down here. And you might think you can get a nice deal on a used condo, an older condo. Be very careful of increasing maintenance fees and special assessments. I've been browsing the ads, and I cannot believe how expensive the maintenance is on used condos, even one bedroom, let alone or two. And I would say do your due diligence before you decide to get an older condo, it might even be worth it to get a new condo, a new construction, to avoid all the headaches. What's going on is seeing a lot of special assessments. We've got a lot of inspections coming up, and they're really looking at them very closely because of what happened up in Surfside, where they had the building collapse. So, it just might be really advantageous to do your due diligence before you buy.
Interesting. Yeah. Now, those are definitely good words of wisdom. Now, for my words of advice, I actually want to commend Miami-Dade County. And the reason I want to commend Miami-Dade County is a while back, they cut a deal to name the arena where the Miami Heat plays. They cut a deal with a company called FTX that ultimately was taken down. Bankruptcy, filed for bankruptcy. Its creator was extradited from the Bahamas to the United States. Now he's facing all sorts of charges, including a recent charge where he tried to bribe an official in China to release about $1 billion in crypto. But the reason I want to commend Miami-Dade County is they made a mistake, obviously, in going ahead and signing FTX to the naming rights for the arena where the Miami Heat plays and where concerts go on right there in downtown Miami. But they now have a brand new sponsor, and I need to actually try to pronounce it correctly because it's spelled, this is the new name of the arena. It's spelled Kasea, but it's pronounced Kusea. So our arena is now going to be called Kusea in downtown Miami. And the officials, before they signed off on the brand new naming of this, they want to make sure that the county officials went through and actually checked the books of this company. What does this company do? It is a software company. And supposedly it has a valuation of $12 billion. $12 billion. So you would think it's going to stick around. For anyone who's wondering what other brands were trying to become the brand new name of the arena, which is called now the Kusea Arena. The other groups that were in the running were UBS, which is a Swiss bank, which just recently took down Credit Suisse in a situation where it went sideways. Wild Fork Foods, that was another one. iHeartRadio, as well as Aroma 360. A Miami set maker. So Miami-Dade County, kudos to you. You went with the right one. No one's going to know how the hell to say the name of this arena, but as long as it's a $12 billion company, you got to think they're going to stick around. So with that, I want to go ahead and I want to thank all of the members of our podcast this week. I want to thank John Gruss. John was a journalist for 25 years. Right now, he has a public relations marketing firm called Gruss Communication. You can reach him at GrussPR.com. That's GRUSSPR.com. Also want to thank Francisco Alvarado. He's been a journalist for more than 20 years. Right now, he's a real estate reporter over at The Real Deal. If you want to get a hold of Francisco, you can send him an email at francisco.alvarado@therealdeal.com. And I also want to thank John Fakler. John was a journalist for 20 plus years. He wrote about white collar crime. He also did a restaurant review. He wrote about restaurants. Right now, John does public relations and marketing consulting. If you want to reach John, send him an email at fackler@consultant.com. And I'm Peter Zalewski of Condo Vultures. Let me remind you, if you have any questions or comments for us, send an email to inquiry@CondoVultures.com. INQUIRY@CondoVultures.com. Until next time, take care of yourself. We'll catch up soon. Ciao, ciao.
Don't buy a South Florida condo, discounted or distressed, before taking a Condo Vultures correction tour. CondoVultures.com offers weekly bus and walking tours that focus on educating buyers on the how-tos of identifying discounted condos, analyzing the opportunities, and purchasing units. Every tour attendee receives a list of all condo projects in a particular market, a market assessment handout, and unmatched expert analysis. For more information on the condo correction tours, please visit CondoVultures.eventbrite.com.